Todd, you're starting us off. Tell us about The Boy and the Heron.
Okay, The Boy and the Heron. Maybe Miyazaki's last movie. Who knows? But it stars this kid named Mahito. Not Mojito. It's Mahito, and he's a young boy, and his mother just died, and his father remarries, and they move out to the family's property out in the middle of nowhere. And there's like a bunch of maids that are there that he calls grannies, and he gets in trouble at school. He's kind of like lashing out and not getting along with anybody. And there's also this gray heron that seems to be taunting him and saying that his mother is still alive and that he needs his assistance. And eventually it leads to this other dimension where death isn't really a thing. And there are like these creatures and things that happen that wrestle with your grip on reality, sort of. And the animation in this is gorgeous. The sequence with the house fire, I think, is stunning. It was like a dizzying, like blurred thing. I'd never really seen anything quite like it. It was amazing. And the score also is terrific. I think it's on the short list for an Oscar contention. The movie overall is pretty devastating. It's clearly a story that means a lot to Miyazaki, and you could feel it in Mahito's journey and how he carries himself and how he reacts to certain things. It isn't really quite as magical as his other movies, but it does have some parts that bring to mind his best work. But the majority of it is pretty grounded in character base. It's not like top shelf Ghibli, but it is really good. There are times that there's like a clear objective that he has to do, which kind of reminded me of Kubo and the Two Strings at times, because it sort of becomes a quest movie at some point. It was originally supposed to be titled How Do You Live? And I think that is a more interesting title, but I could see why they changed it. It doesn't really fit the vibe of the movie, at least in the middle portion. It wouldn't have really made a whole lot of sense. But the last 45 minutes, I think, are vintage Miyazaki. It is so unusual, and it's heartfelt, and the strange creatures are treated like they're absolutely real, which is what sets these movies apart from other studios. It's almost like a perfect epilogue message from Miyazaki too. It's about like building your own tower, realizing your own future, and I think it's a lovely movie. It's easy 3.5 stars.
All right, Adam, why don't you go next?
All right. The Boy and Heron. Okay. All right. So Terry and I actually went to see this as part of our double feature that we did. And Studio Ghibli has been something that I've been working through their filmography on. I have several. Spirited Away is my top 100. I'm a big fan of Howl's Moving Castle, and you get a lot of those kind of similar story beats, not story beats, but a visual style in The Boy and the Heron, especially with like the weird kind of creatures that are part of this world, to opening up doors to other places. That's very Howl's Moving Castle. It's probably one of the most visually stunning movies of the year. It's created so beautifully. Miyazaki is a masterful kind of storyteller from there. I agree with Todd. It's not, upper echelon Ghibli, but it is if you would say this is their worst movie, it's a damn good like kind of group to be in. I don't think it's near their worst movie. It's definitely near the top of my Ghibli kind of list the ones I have seen anyway. I love the story of the boy. The heron transformation is kind of frightening as well. The little marshmallow people that come out are like adorable. The pelicans we kind of mentioned off were probably the most frightening villains of the entire year so far. It's such a triumph and an adventure, and I really do like it a lot as well. And I'm sitting right at 3.5 stars. It's definitely one that if this won Best Animated Feature, I would be completely like this. I would probably cheer on this one if it won, because we don't get Ghibli, we don't get anime movies winning Best Animated Feature really ever. Spirited Away being the first and I think only one possibly anime film that has won.
Because I know in 2002 Spirited Away won. It was the second year of the award, but
the second. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, that's right. Because the other one, but I think like when Marnie was here, had been nominated, but not many Ghibli films have ever won Best Animated, even though they put up some of the best and most unique product out there. So, Boy and the Heron, 3.5 stars.
All right, Zach, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I'm also at 3.5 stars. If this isn't quad approved, Terry should be fired. This is a absolutely stunning work of art, and if you approach it that way, I think you can get a lot out of it. Is the story the most decipherable story in the world? Does it have the most wonderful, memorable characters ever? Does it have songs the likes of the song from Short Term 12? No, it doesn't. But it's a visual spectacle that's amazing to watch, and The backgrounds are all watercolors, and he does things that are so antithetical to the modern animation process. Everything is hand drawn. There's no computers at all used in the making of this film. It's so against the model, the streamlined model of the kind of assembly line, Pixar, DreamWorks, sort of stuff. I guess really kind of lesser stuff. We talked this year about Elemental. We had sort of a disagreement about Elemental. It's just a reminder that not all animation needs to be Disney. And this movie is, I think, wonderfully anti-Disney. It's not a sweet, sentimental movie. It's really a movie about loss. It's about grief. It's about historical trauma. This is set in the years immediately preceding the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the opening shot is pretty harrowing as well. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, as I was watching the movie, most of the audience in my theater were adults, but I was thinking, like, I don't know if I would take a 5 or 6 year old to this movie. It's pretty grim. And even the depiction of the Heron himself is not just this lovable Disney character. He's kind of vulgar. He's sort of nasty. And he's a trickster, and he's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I love the design of both the real world and the underworld. I would be lying if I said I could pass an exam about what happens in the movie, but that's also kind of Miyazaki. His movies are surreal. They use a cinematic vocabulary that no other filmmaker really uses. In mixing both, again, real characters, real kind of human drama, real human interactions, and then these kind of fantastical creatures of this underworld. I was reminded a little bit of Totoro I saw in the movie. I saw some Howl's Moving Castle, and the darkness of like a Princess Mononoke, which has always been maybe my favorite of his films. My one criticism is I wish this movie had been released with a 20-minute documentary afterwards that shows how it was made. Like, I'm thinking about when I watched Pinocchio last year on Netflix, and I think I was a little bit dour on the film when we reviewed it. That next week, I watched the making of it on Netflix, and it totally changed my opinion. Now, is that fair to do? I think so. I think you need to have an understanding of the craft and the precision and the labor and of love that goes into these movies to fully grasp it, even if the story, even if the tone isn't always something that totally gels with you. I would, and there is a really cool documentary on Miyazaki that people should watch. I think it's on Amazon Prime. But I don't know if I would say this is the first film you should start with if you're a Miyazaki fan. I think Spirited Away is probably the best entry point for that. But like Killers of the Flower Moon, if this ends up being the coda to the end of one of the greatest careers in the history of moving images, I think it's a worthy way to go out. This guy has been retiring now for 6 or 7 years, so we don't know if this is the last we'll ever see him. But in a way, I kind of felt like while I was watching the experience of watching Killers of the Flower Moon, I felt like this is kind of the end. This is a great statement to make about someone's career. And really, it's a great look, almost Fabelman's-esque, about why Miyazaki does what he does. I think it's a great portrait of who he is as a storyteller, maybe more personal than any of his other films. So I'm agreed with you guys. Great movie. Wonderful experience watching it.
So, question, did you guys watch the subbed version or the dubbed version?
Call.
Sub.
We watched the dubbed. It was what fit into our
schedule.
Our schedule for the double.
So Robert Pattinson, I heard he was the Heron.
Oh, he's great, actually.
You would never guess that was Robert Pattinson. All right, so this is the third Miyazaki film I've watched. The first one was My Neighbor Totoro, and then Spirited Away, and now this one. I'll give it 3 stars for you guys, but I was really tempted to go 2.5. And everything you guys said, but so much of what you guys said is true. You said that it was it's this gorgeous movie. It's stunning. The first half hour or so of this movie is amazing. I was totally into it. Then when it goes to the other world, it lost me. I had no idea what was going on.
There were that's the beauty of it.
New animal, and it's like, I had no idea. I don't know, but you're right. The story, at the beginning at least, the themes, the visuals, it's kind of undeniable in that way. But man, give us a story, and then to wrap it all up the way it does, it's like, no, really, it's about environmentalism. and taking care of the world you're given.
Mhm.
But also it's about loss. I'm like, what? Wait, what? I don't know, but you're right. I can get behind giving it 3 and make it quad approved, but I don't know. That story kind of lost me. Also, it is like the longest 2-hour movie I've ever watched. Like that. These
There aren't a
things
lot
are
of 2-hour.
dense.
There aren't a lot of 2-hour animated movies. I was realizing that when I was watching it, because there are parts that do drag in the middle, but it's I don't know. I didn't think it ever got to the point of feeling long.
Miyazaki has a way of how his films are paced. Like he has a very deliberate style of animation, but also his pacing. He has those really hyper moments, and it has moments that are more like character driven stuff, and that's the stuff that was really in the middle. And I've felt it at times where it's like, okay, let's see what happens. Let's get to the next little scene, but nowhere was I like not engaged at all. It's very engaging kind of film too, and I think the good starting point, like kind of Zach mentioned, like this probably wouldn't be a good starting point for anybody who's never seen a Miyazaki. I think Kiki's Delivery Service would be a really good one for that. Yeah. So, but it's also coming from people who have seen or at least more familiar with his work. So his work are pretty much very similar in style and tone for most of the really sad, somber tales of kind of and characters too.
The beginning of this had a lot of Totoro in it. Just this
I've never
idea
seen
of
Totoro.
well,
that's the one I'm
it had the idea of moving to the country to with where in that one mom is
the
sick.
birds kind of look like Totoro.
Dead.
The guard birds at the end look like all Totoro characters, but he has a lot of characters. He has a thing about oversized, dumb birds. I feel like they're in all of his movies that are kind of these basic, almost caricature types. But I don't know. I mean, listen, you're right. I mean, the plot of this movie is kind of unfathomable at times, and it doesn't make sense. On the other hand, it's not predictable. It doesn't break into lame song and dance numbers. It doesn't have lame jokes. It pauses. It uses sound, I think, really intentionally. There's several moments of total silence in this movie. And, it's so different than really even other anime, even other Studio Ghibli movies. It has this distinct tone, and Adam's right about the pacing. So what if it's a little slow? Like, sit back, enjoy what is, I think, the 21st century equivalent of like frescoes in paintings and mosaics in churches. I mean, his detail is unbelievable in this movie. Like Todd was saying, the fire, like look at the way that house is designed. Like even like the wallpaper in his bedroom is amazing to look at. And that's just the real world details. I mean, the fantasy details are amazing too. And just the movements. I mean, the characters just look so awesome, and it doesn't look manufactured. It doesn't look fake. It doesn't look cheap in any way. So I mean, I agree with you. I kind of feel like Terry has a similar reaction to Terrence Malick movies. He doesn't like movies that don't make sense. I get that. I understand. I'm a left brain person too. But at some point, you need to just sit back and realize that what Miyazaki is doing is meant to go over your head. I don't think he wants everybody to understand. And maybe he doesn't even understand the depths and the mystique of his worlds that he makes.
Multiple rewatches required.
Well, I think this year with animation, I think just proves that we all look at animation differently, because like we have disagreed pretty much on every one of them. So
yeah, Spider-Verse would be another big one too.
Yeah, and Zach, obviously he's a sucker for non-computerized animation, and then Terry needs more of a ground-based story. And I don't know, this is interesting though. I thought this was right up Terry's alley, especially because he was such a big fan of the other two that he mentioned that he had seen. But hey, that's why we do this.
Terry's funniest like critique, a little thing that he mentioned. He leaned over. It's like, it's the boy and the seven hags.
No, it was he went to go live with Snow White and the seven hags.
That's what it was. Yeah.
The way that all those characters look, the way that they walk. I mean, Terry, didn't you just watch the Triplets of Belleville? Like every one of those characters could have come out of a Triplets of Belleville. They're absolutely fascinating, and they're kind of throwaway characters, right? He didn't need to spend the time and detail on all those.
Well, one of them he did
the way that they did. Well, one of them, sure, but the other six maybe not so much.
Well, one of them came straight out of Spirited Away. It looked just like the old lady in that movie.
I thought there was also and to be fair, I thought there was enough in this story. I really liked. There's a kind of a twist at the end of the movie where one of the characters is revealed to be someone. It's Wizard of Oz-esque. You know, these people have their kind of surrogates in the real world, and the reveal of one of the characters late in the movie as Mojito's. You know, there's someone important that is in his life that person was. I thought was a beautiful moment. I thought that was actually almost gave me chills. I wasn't expecting that. As a really, really nice quality to it.
All right.
I hope this movie beats Spider-Man. I think Todd's agreed with that. I think, I mean, you know,
sure.
It's gonna be this movie versus Spider-Man. Spider-Man's probably gonna win, but in a perfect world, these movies would tie. They're so different, and yet it's a great illustration of the way that animation continues to plow forward in innovative ways, but by using traditional technique.
I would say that Miyazaki may have the upper hand because this being his air quotes last movie. I think that would be a good crowning achievement to get a win under his another.
Well, Elemental is still the best animated movie of the year. So,
okay, well,
this winning the box office bodes well for it. I think.
Yeah, I mean that's unbelievable. So, it helps. I think I would root for this. Sure,
but it is weird.
This is usually a weekend where a lot of big stuff comes out, though. I think this might be one of those instances where the writers' strike and the actors' strike gave an opportunity for a film like this to be seen in a way it normally wouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and like there's a big release every week on Netflix now. I mean, even more so than previous years. Like the movie we're about to review, like that movie could have been a big hit. It's got big stars in it. It's like a sci-fi-ish movie, and that could have been a box office movie, but instead it's just on Netflix. So.
Yeah,
it's interesting how that actually ends up championing something else.
Well, and it's weird too. Like we get all the award circuit, like the New York. I think it was one of the Matt Naglia posted about it. I mentioned it. Terry and I went over this, but like the best animated feature went to Spider-Man, but the top 10 movies of the year, Boy and the Heron was mentioned, not Spider-Man. So I think it's like this is getting more kind of the upper echelon movie of the year, where Spider-Man's just looked at as the premier animated movie. That makes sense.
Did you guys see Ninja Turtles too? I can't remember.
I did.
Yes.
Yeah,
we
That's an
reviewed
awesome
it.
movie. Oh yeah, we reviewed it.
Yeah.